Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. The Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's talk about some of the stories that are going on, certainly out of the nation's capital. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned that flight disruptions would continue across the U.S. As the government shutdown drags into its fourth week. More than 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 Transportation Security Administration agents are being forced to work during the shutdown without pay. Just one important part of the government, as you know, that is being impacted, Tim, by this breakdown between Republicans and Democrats, a breakdown that we seem to see over and over again.
Bloomberg News correspondent and host of the Big Take podcast, David Gura, sat down for an interview with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to talk about the relationship between the U.S. and Russia, the upcoming New York City mayoral election, and first and foremost, the ongoing government shutdown.
As Democrats, we continue to make clear to our Republican colleagues that we will sit down with them anytime, any place, in order to reopen the government, to negotiate a bipartisan agreement that actually makes life better for the American people in terms of spending and funding. But we also have to decisively address the Republican health care crisis. We've maintained that position from the very beginning, before Republicans shut the government down and during the entirety of the shutdown, because it is a real crisis that has been created at this moment, particularly as it relates to the urgent need to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
As you and I are speaking, the House Speaker is doing a press conference just down the hall. What is the level of engagement? Do you pass one another? Are you speaking with one another? Are Democrats talking to Republicans right now?
The conversations have been very limited, unfortunately, because Donald Trump has not given House Republican leaders or Senate Republican leaders permission to negotiate, reinforcing the principle from our view that he made the decision to shut the government down. They want to continue to inflict pain on federal employees. They've done that from the very beginning of Donald Trump's presidency. In fact, more than 200,000 federal employees had been forced off the job prior to the government shutdown. And this is something that we've continued to see them build upon during the shutdown. Until Donald Trump gets serious about reopening the government, unfortunately, we're going to remain in this situation, and everyday Americans are being hurt.
He's getting ready to take a trip to Asia. Is it appropriate for him to be doing that at this moment when the government is shut down?
I think that the president has a responsibility both domestically and throughout the world. However, what has been irresponsible is that throughout this shutdown, he's found more time to golf than he has to engage with Democrats on Capitol Hill. He's decided to try to steal $230 million in taxpayer funds from the Department of Injustice. Donald Trump and his administration have found $40 billion to bail out a right-wing wannabe dictator in Argentina and can't find a dime to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits to keep health care affordable for tens of millions of Americans. And on top of all of that, they are demolishing the East Wing of the White House in ways that have appropriately horrified the American people.
I want to ask you about potential off-ramps, and Tammy Baldwin, the senator from Wisconsin, Democrat, said Trump is the off-ramp at this point. Do you agree with that assessment, and has there been any kind of outreach or dialogue between you and the White House?
Leader Schumer made clear earlier this week that we have reached out to the White House again to indicate that prior to Trump's departure for Asia, he should sit down with Democrats to find a path forward, to reopen the government, to enter into a bipartisan spending agreement, and to address the healthcare crisis that Marjorie Taylor Greene acknowledges must be addressed, and that traditional conservatives who are in the toughest seats in the country have now publicly acknowledged this week needs to be addressed.
Can I ask you a question of congressional mechanics, and that is, can the Democratic leader pick up the phone, call the White House, and reasonably expect the president's going to take that phone call? Are you able to do that? And if so, what's keeping you from having that dialogue?
Well, traditionally, that probably is the case, but in this White House, that's very much unclear. Donald Trump didn't have a meeting with House or Senate Democratic leadership until 2 days prior to the government shutting down.
That, of course, was House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries with Bloomberg's David Gore. David joining us from the Bloomberg News Bureau in the nation's capital. Hey, David, what I picked up from there is, we hear the president and Republicans talk about the shutdown. Then we hear Democrats separately talk about it. But again, nothing about leaders coming together to really work on the issues that separate them. And I kind of got that from the House Minority Leader as well.
Separately is the key word there, Carol. Suffice to say, these two parties are not speaking with one another. And I should say, at the Capitol building today, it was incredibly quiet. You do have congressional leadership there holding press conferences, meeting among themselves. But it is sleepy isn't the right word. Empty is perhaps a better word. And it was clear from that conversation that the person who needs to be at the table, or at least giving the blessing to Republicans who are at the table, is President Trump. And there is, I think, a level of resignation among Democratic leadership that without that, this is just going to continue. So we're poised for President Trump, as we talked about in that interview, to take this trip for about a week to Asia. Again, there's a recognition there that with him absent, this is unlikely to advance or develop here over the coming days.
Yeah, so I guess the big question on the Democrat and Republican side is what can be done with the president on this trip? What can be done out of the country? Is there a chance that these two sides can come together and end the government shutdown, even if he's not around?
Well, there is some hope for optimism, of course, but there are a number of kind of pressure points that are on the horizon. I think that's pretty notable. So tomorrow is the first one, October the 24th. That's when a lot of federal workers are not going to receive their paychecks for the first time in this shutdown. So the pain of the shutdown is going to be more acutely felt by more people. And I think what's kind of novel about this shutdown is you've had someone who heads the Office of Management and Budget at the White House really moving things around, playing what he calls budgetary twister to make sure that a number of government employees are paid, certain programs are continued. All of that starts to become more and more difficult here as the days tick on. So tomorrow, a big pressure point. Another one is next week, November the 1st, when some SNAP benefits are scheduled to expire. And of course, when open enrollment begins for healthcare plans. That's the moment at which Democrats believe Americans are going to look at the prospects of their healthcare going up, becoming more and more expensive. And they're going to perhaps recognize the fact, as Democrats would say, that this is something that's real and important, and that having the government shut down so that those subsidies can be restored is worth doing.
I will say, I think that message is getting to Americans outside of the Beltway. I was in Arizona last week. The lead story on local news last weekend was about premiums going up for Obamacare. That story seems to be getting out there, and people are actually talking about that. David, a lot in that interview. One thing you also touched on was what's coming here in New York in the next couple of weeks, early November, the mayoral election, and the way that Leader Jeffries has or has not yet communicated with Zohran Mamdani, the favorite to win the election here in November. What did he say about that?
They have spoken a couple of times, and I was optimistic. I had my fingers crossed that he'd be willing to make an endorsement today during that interview. He declined to do so, but he has said that he's going to speak with Zohran Mamdani again today and tomorrow as he prepares to do that. He talked about the obligation of doing that. I asked him, did he watch the debate last night? The final mayoral debate, or did he watch the Knicks season opener? He admitted he watched the last few minutes of the basketball game and not the debate, but he kept up with it and kept up with what the conversation has been. And after he declined to make an endorsement, I really pushed him on what the outstanding issues are. And what he emphasized to me during our conversation is, look, he really applauds Mr. Mamdani for his emphasis on affordability. He thinks that's a signal issue in New York City and one that's a signal issue across this country for Democrats. So really applauded him for focusing so much on that. But he acknowledged the fact that President Trump is likely to go after New York after this mayoral election takes place. Does Mamdani have the capacity, the experience to deal with the level of pressure that the federal government is going to bring to bear? So I personally a bit disappointed that we didn't get that endorsement during my interview today, but it does seem like that's likely. I mean, I think what he said over and over again is he plans to weigh in on this race before early voting begins. And as both of you know, early voting in New York City is scheduled to start on Saturday of this week. So time is nigh, and he's going to do it soon. I should say he was about like 98% there, I think, during the course of our conversation. He really applauded Mamdani for saying that he planned to keep Jessica Tisch as the New York Police Department commissioner if he is elected. He saw that as a positive step.
All right, last question, though, because this also came up, and I feel like people have said to me, why aren't you guys talking about this? But it's all over social media activity. And David, that is what's happening at the White House, the actual physical demolishing of a piece of the White House. I know in the grand scheme of things, maybe isn't as important as a lot of other things that are going on in this world, but it feels very symbolic, despite the actual physicality of what's happening and indicative of a president that can kind of do whatever he wants. What did Mr. Jeffries say on that?
He expressed dismay over this happening, as I think a lot of people in this city have as well. Of course, it's a very old building that has been remodeled in the past, but this is pretty dramatic. And in the past, it would have gone through a lot of reviews. That hasn't happened here. The president said initially he planned to build this ballroom. That was going to have no effect on the existing building. Of course, that's not the case. We have seen images and video of the demolition of the east wing of the White House that are startling to a lot of people, as the minority leader said. And then there's just the notion of what's being built there, this massive structure, this 90,000 square foot ballroom, which the president says is essential for the leader of the United States to entertain foreign leaders who come through Washington, D.C. An organization of architectural historians pointing out that just proportionality is wrong here. To have a building of that scale on the White House plan is just huge. So a lot of people just expressing dismay and stupefaction over what's happening here. And I should note as well, the price tag on this has gotten larger over the course of this construction, too. It started out at $200 million. The president said it'd be paid for by himself and private donors. Now the price tag is $300 million. So a lot of people are just kind of wondering how this is happening, how it's happening so quickly. And I think that you hitting on kind of the metaphorical side of this is important too, Carol. A lot of people kind of looking at it as a way of the president here moving with some relative impunity.
Got to say, I have an old house, 1800s, and I can't even change a window without like a commission weighing in. So there's got to be something when we're talking about the people's house. David
You're
Gora.
not the president, Carol.
That's what I'm saying. I'm nothing.
You're not nothing, but you're not the president.
I can't change a window without stuff coming down on me. And I'm just thinking about the historic significance of that building there on Pennsylvania Avenue. All right, David, thank you as always. Bloomberg News correspondent, host of the Big Take podcast, David Gora.
Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Businessweek Daily coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
The Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups were arrested Thursday morning and charged as part of a sprawling sports gambling probe, federal prosecutors said. In a press conference Thursday, FBI Director Kash Patel and Brooklyn federal prosecutors said at least 30 people were arrested across 11 states, including current and former NBA players and coaches, as part of two separate criminal schemes related to illegal sports betting. Here's FBI Director Kash Patel at a press conference this morning in New York.
Let's not, mince words. This is the insider trading saga for the NBA. If you're participating in the legal gambling industry, you got nothing to worry about. If you're participating in illegal conduct, you got everything to worry about, and this case shows it.
That's FBI Director Kash Patel earlier today. We got Miles Miller with us. He's Bloomberg News senior reporter. He covers Homeland Security and the FBI. He joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Miles also covers city government here in New York City.
We've been frantically scrambling.
I'm like one of these. I turn around,
So we're going to get to the sports gambling and the NBA stuff in just a minute. It's fascinating, and we're going to bring in Ira Boudouet in a minute too. But first, let's talk a little bit about what's going on here in New York, because New York City Mayor Eric Adams has endorsed Governor Cuomo for the mayoral election.
You'll remember Gracie Mansion, beautiful palatial mansion on the east side of Manhattan. We thought Eric Adams was going to drop out of the race, and instead, what did he say? He said, Andrew Cuomo is a snake and a liar. Asked today why he's endorsing Andrew Cuomo, he said, brothers fight, but when families are attacked, brothers come together. He sees this as essential to Cuomo having any shot of winning the election against Mamdani. The cards are stacked against Cuomo, they're stacked against Sliwa, and they were stacked against Adams. And so this is the only way he sees that Cuomo could win, which would be by endorsing him. He's going to go out around the city with Cuomo.
Will he help? Will that help?
It remains to be seen. He's going to go to areas where he had support. Which you would probably say are in southeast Queens, probably Wakefield in the Bronx, those places. But those are places that Cuomo probably has support already.
Yeah.
Will it help? Unclear. But this is New York's second black mayor who is going to stand up, going to go to church with Cuomo and say, this is the person who is going to best support you, not Mamdani. And that is going to be, critical in the last couple of days of this election. And it shows how desperate the Cuomo campaign is. What's
Mayor Adams going to do next? There's been a lot of speculation about would he take a job? I mean, there was some reporting that said, okay, maybe he's being offered a job in the Trump administration. What's going on there?
I was told many years ago never to predict what Eric Adams is going to do. Because, he can sit right in front of you on Businessweek, Bloomberg Businessweek, and tell you no matter what, he is not going anywhere, and then sure enough, drop out of the race.
Like he did that for you.
Yeah, right.
When you
on my birthday, he tells me he's not leaving the race, and then straight up leaves the race. He says he wants to get his PhD. What he really wants to do if he stays in government is have this. A source told me this is have any position where he can bring staff, have a detail, and do important things.
All right, so tell us about what happened earlier this morning. A couple of indictments coming down. I'm switching gears. What?
I would like a staff and have a detail.
I've known Eric a long time. Let's just be honest about what he's told people. Go ahead.
You know who have staffs and details sometimes are NBA players. So let's go to what happened this morning. What did we find out?
So you've got two different scandals here involving the MTA. You've got one
NBA.
Sorry. So what did I say?
MTA.
MTA.
I'm still thinking about
That's
this.
okay.
I've been up since 4 this morning. Okay.
Got it.
You've got two separate scandals. You got the first one involving, which is basically insider trading at the NBA. Basketball player Terry Rozier telling a friend that he planned to take himself out of a game. That friend then places a bunch of bets worth more than $200,000 on that game, which would be fishy to anyone. And so it tipped off federal prosecutors. And so they knew that something was wrong there. And it exposed this big issue, including 4 players who were trading on things that was trading on private information so they could make money off of things that were not public. So that's the first case.
So knowing a player is in and out can determine the outcome.
Right, exactly.
Insider trading.
And LeBron James, a victim of this,
Second indictment.
Exactly. Second indictment. You've got the mafia. You've got the four of the 5 New York crime families running rigged games on Lexington Avenue and running rigged games on Washington Place. They had a table set up where they could see live the card that was face down. And so the games were rigged. They use NBA players in order to get people to get enticed into the game. But the players, prosecutors believe, were in on it. They believed that Chauncey Billups, coach of the Trailblazers and an MVP, was part of this conspiracy to steal people's money, and he got a cut of it, they say.
Not nice.
No,
not nice. Again, indictments, stuff to be known, right? And things will carry out. Miles, thank you for breaking that down. A lot going on. Miles Miller, Bloomberg News senior reporter covering Homeland Security and the FBI.
I want to bring in Ira Boudouet. He's global business of sports reporter for Bloomberg News. Ira, I want to just set the poker stuff aside for a second. The prop bets about the players is really what I want to talk about, because you wrote in August for Bloomberg Businessweek that sports leagues are struggling to deal with so-called player props for bets. Big focus of your story was the MLB, if I recall correctly. But this is exactly what materialized here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a known problem, as you say. So there were these cases earlier this year in July. MLB announced investigations involving 2 Cleveland Guardians pitchers, and they were alleged to have been throwing a ball on purpose, and you can bet just on the first pitch, right? That's how small some prop bets get. There had been a previous NBA case, Chauncey Porter, actually the same federal investigation that brought the charges today involved, actually it was how Chauncey Porter wound up pleading guilty to taking himself out of games early, saying he was sick, and having co-conspirators bet the under on a prop. So this is really the vulnerability for leagues.
I want to say, are we surprised? I mean, the meshing of gambling and sports, which was considered a no-no for so long.
Yeah, look what happened to Pete Rose.
Exactly, right? Like, no, don't do it. Here we are, and then this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. The question that is really hard to get to the bottom of is whether it's better or worse to have legal regulated sports betting, right? Because clearly it's more widespread now. It's on your phone. It's advertised at you all the time, right? So there's just more people involved, more
Diced
awareness.
and sliced a million different ways.
It's also much more closely monitored when it's legal, because you can see every bet, and there are these organizations that actually are watching for suspicious betting activity, which is how, in many cases, including these cases, investigators get tipped off. They see unusual betting activity and they follow up.
All of the gaming apps on your phone, those are all regulated? People are monitoring or no?
Yes. So if you're betting on FanDuel, DraftKings, other legal sports books, yes, those bets are being monitored by these independent groups that have access to the data and whose job it is to, on behalf of the leagues and the sports books, who, if you listen to federal prosecutors, are the victims in these cases because people are using insider information to take out bets that then win, and the sports books have to pay out. So they participate in these monitoring systems that are set up to catch suspicious activity, where often is a lot of action suddenly, a lot of bets very suddenly on a player to underperform, and very large bets from maybe bettors who've never bet before. Those are the things that get flagged.
It does seem like, Ira, there could be a happy medium here where maybe the government comes out and says, okay, well, maybe we let the cat out of the bag a little too much a few years ago with the Supreme Court decision, or maybe the Supreme Court let the cat out of the bag. I don't know if they can do this legally, but what if there were a way to say, okay, we can allow you to bet on some stuff, the outcomes of games, but the granular prop bets that are 100% in the control of one single player, that just isn't working.
Yeah,
is that possible to do?
We're seeing this happen. Prop bets on college players in some states are not allowed. The NBA, after the Chauncey Porter case, convinced major U.S. sports books to no longer offer under prop bets on the lowest paid players in the league. And
with the idea that the lowest paid players would be more incentivized to do this?
Vulnerable. So Chauncey Porter was what's called a two-way player on a $415,000 contract. What's interesting about the accusations today, the indictment today, is that Terry Rozier, who's accused of doing this, making $26 million this year. So it may not be just a case of going after the most vulnerable players. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, has recently hinted that they're looking at other things they might be able to do to restrict prop betting. And after the cases in Cleveland with the Guardians pitchers, the governor there, DeWine, asked their state gaming regulators to get rid of all prop bets. And so Ohio's looking into that. So there is movement to try to limit prop bets. But it's not clear kind of how that will shake out. And actually, I think one of the other things that this might lead to is more pressure to have a federally regulated system, which is what Adam Silver has always been asking for. You
were part of a group of reporters a few years ago who did a big Bloomberg Businessweek special on gambling in sports. And I'm just wondering if what we knew at then, or now we knew then, would it have turned out this way? Or in other words, how has this gone? Has this gone okay?
Yeah, I think the experiment, there's two big vulnerabilities, right? There's the erosion of trust and the corruption issue, right? Whether if you keep having cases like this, fans will no longer really believe in what they're watching on TV. That's a big problem. I think it grows today. We will see how persistent that is and how big it gets. The other thing that I think, just more broadly in sort of the experiment of legal sports betting in this country, I think once you've had legalization and it's now on phones and mobile, what we're finding out is that addiction is a real problem, and it's damaging the personal finances of a lot of particularly young men who get into this. So I think those are two things that it's not like we didn't know that problem gambling and manipulation existed, and it's not like those two things don't exist when you do this in black markets. But there is, I think, a real case to be made that opening it up this way has exacerbated those problems.
Yeah, I know. And then you've got the other story that's out there. Kat Doherty wrote, I think you are part of that too. DraftKings acquiring a federally regulated trading venue, marking its most aggressive move yet into the contested world of prediction markets. So this just melding of stuff is interesting. Come back soon so we can continue this. Ira Boudway, Global Business of Sports reporter at Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 2 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Tesla shares, if you check them out, they have been bouncing around
1.4% right now. They turned positive later in the session, but for most of the day, they were lower.
Yeah, down almost 6% at their lows today, right? Listen, the company came out, they posted earnings late yesterday. Results largely disappointing, profit missing estimates despite record vehicle deliveries and operating income plunging 40% in the third quarter, Tim.
Meantime, the head of the company, the world's richest man, we were talking about Elon Musk. He hijacked the earnings call, pleading with investors to approve his $1 trillion pay package and blasting the shareholder advisory firms that have come out against the proposal.
the point is, I just like there needs to be enough voting control to give a strong influence, but not so much that I can't be fired if I go insane.
That's it.
That's classic, Elon.
That's
just in case I got insane. Hey, like
just those two things.
I guess so.
That's the barometer. That's what we're doing.
I guess so. I don't know. All right, that's Elon Musk apparently making the case last night for that pay package on the earnings call, and really, I guess, his position at the company. Let's talk all things Elon and Tesla. With us is Bloomberg Businessweek senior reporter Max Chafkin, co-host of the Everybody's Business podcast, author of The Contrarian, Peter Thiel, and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power, right here in studio. All right, we got a lot to talk about. That's classic Elon.
It is. I mean, there's probably no figure in modern life who so openly flirts with the idea of his own insanity as Elon Musk. But of course, what he's talking about
on an earnings call,
on an earnings responsibility. Of course, what he's saying essentially is you got to let me cook, and the only reason I should be fired is if I am going crazy, and that would be crazier than he normally is, because of course he's pretty out there on a normal day, and for believers, that's kind of part of the appeal.
Dare I say, Max, a lot of people would say, even though they could be critical of $1 trillion pay package, they say, well, what would Tesla be without Elon Musk?
Yeah, and that's kind of the difficult position that investors find themselves in this company, where, there's some opposition to this pay package, and we've seen some of the shareholder advisory firms come out against it. But I think for most investors, you're kind of in a position where if you say no to this package, and Elon Musk threatens to leave or even does leave, the stock falls, right? It doesn't go up, because so much of this company's value is about the future, and that future is all about Elon Musk. The other thing I'll say about this pay package, big as it is, it's requiring the company to get even bigger, to hit milestones that seem almost cartoonish at this point. So if you're an investor, you're saying, well, I mean, let's hope it works out. He's been effective before. Why not this time?
Well, I got to say, one investor, we're talking about New York State, and the comptroller, Thomas DiNapoli, did say that Tesla pay package for Elon is overly generous, lacks clear performance metrics to justify the $1 trillion that he could earn under this proposal. He plans to vote against the compensation package, and Tesla directors up for re-election on November 6th. He spoke with Bloomberg Surveillance on TV earlier today.
When you see the excessive compensation package, I mean, credit to Mr. Musk. He's already one of the richest men in the world. How much more rich does one person have to be?
I don't know. I'm not that rich, but so I think it's.
I don't know. I know that we joke about that, but I don't know if that's the right question to be asking, Max. Is it about wealth or is it about control?
I think it's about both. I mean, people always say, and you always hear things like, well, Elon Musk doesn't care. He's so rich. He is worth hundreds of billion dollars. Yeah. What's another couple $100 billion? But I think when you're talking about this level of wealth, you do, like, the amount of money he stands to make on this package would, double his wealth potentially. So like that is a big difference. And the other thing, Tim, as you said, Musk says this is about control. It's about being able to maintain his position, to essentially be able to operate without any kind of shareholder activism, a critic might say, without constraint.
Having said that, you go to the core business, right? And EVs, like, listen, for a long time, he and Tesla did not really face much competition here in the U.S. And he and Tesla for a long time promise, didn't deliver, and then they started to deliver. But the environment is changing. But so too is the evolution continuing for Tesla as a company, right? Whether it's battery storage and other businesses. But I don't know, what is the business? And does that business, would it be able to hit some of these metrics to justify this pay package? I
mean, that is what's so difficult. And to the point that Thomas DiNapoli is making in there, Tesla has not done that great over the last couple of years. The stock price has been phenomenal. Investors, and particularly like the kind of retail investors who follow what Elon Musk says and buy his stock, like they are in love with this thing. There is a boom in AI. Elon Musk is talking a lot about AI, but car sales have not been great. And even in this quarter, which was good, right, where sales went way up, margins went down, and there is a sense among investors, and you've even heard this from the company itself, that this is going to be a bit of an aberration, because what happened is the tax credit, the $7,500, was effectively making electric cars cheaper. It went away as part of the big beautiful bill that Trump passed. So this is kind of like a one-time thing where you have a bunch of people basically moving purchases forward. At the same time, lots of competition from lots of automakers. Now we talked about this really for years, for almost a decade, like, GM and others are going to come. Well, they're here now. There are a bunch of really great electric cars that cost the same amount of money, or in some markets less than a Tesla. BYD has cars in Europe that are very, very competitive with Tesla and are cheaper. GM has cars now that are about the same price as the cheapest car and that are competitive. So that's a challenge. And then on the other hand, you have Musk's kind of fantastic promises around humanoid robots, around autonomy. And that stuff is hard to value. You basically either value that at zero or you value it at like $20 trillion. And so it's kind of created a gap in the discourse around this company.
So, look, obviously none of us know the answer about how to value that business. But if increasingly these autos are becoming commodity, and outside of the U.S., especially with competition from BYD and Xiaomi, then it looks like a more insular market for Tesla, at least for autos here in the U.S., if they don't lean into Optimus, if they don't lean into other technology.
Yeah, I think there are two things. So one is Optimus, humanoid robot. Elon Musk says, very soon, like in a matter of years, we're going to have these things in our homes. They're going to be like friends. You're like not even going to be able to tell. I think he said on the earnings call, you're not going to barely be able to tell it's a robot. Like if that's true, obviously that's great. The other thing, is sort of robotaxis, unsupervised self-driving, which Tesla has yet to do, but it is trying to do. There is a question on how you value that, because Elon Musk has said for years and years and years, basically that is worth an unlimited amount of money. Your cars will increase in value because of this thing. But you're seeing Chinese companies essentially give this stuff away. So that's why I say, we don't really know how valuable this is yet, even though the idea of not having to drive your car and being able to take a nap, that obviously sounds great. It's just unclear how much people will pay for that and how much they will be asked to pay for that, given that a bunch of other automakers are giving away very similar technology.
It's also not quite doable, right? Listen, we've talked about Waymo, how much we love it, but I mean, it's still tricky, and the infrastructure doesn't necessarily support it everywhere.
No, do not take a nap in your Tesla today, despite what you see on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, there are huge question marks here, and I think when you look at Waymo, it's a big success, but it's a success in a very narrow way. Like a defined number of markets operating at slow speed. They don't drive on highways yet. There's tons of supervision. There's remote supervision. We've talked about this. Same thing with Tesla. And Waymo has been very deliberate, rolling this out in a handful of markets, moving very slowly. I think Tesla, and I think most people who cover the autonomy space closely, believe that there is no way Tesla gets anywhere near the timelines that Elon Musk is talking about. What we kind of expect is that it follows more like the Waymo path. Now of course, and if it does that, it's worth a lot less money. Now, of course, Elon Musk is telling a different story where one day he's going to just basically flip the switch and you're going to see this deploy everywhere.
We had an interesting conversation with Ross Gerber and with Ed Ludlow yesterday on the academic differences between the radar LiDAR side of things with Waymo and the vision only stuff with Tesla. Where do you fall on that, Max? Do you believe that, Ross Gerber doesn't think it's possible to have vision only self-driving? There
are a lot of experts who I've talked to who are very skeptical of the technical approach, which I think is a problem. The great thing about LiDAR is it's like an additional safety feature. I also think, again, there are so many reasons to think that the timeline is going to take much longer than what we're talking about, that it's almost not worth parsing the technical differences. This is something that is going to take decades to pull off in the way that Elon Musk wants it to pull off.
Relevant when you've got a company that trades with a PE of 320 or a forward PE of about 262, right? Because these are things that aren't going to happen so quickly. Got to run. Love, love, love. Max Chafkin, senior reporter at Bloomberg Businessweek, co-host of the Everybody's Business podcast, and author of The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power.
Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Businessweek Daily coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
we're watching a lot of different companies, but I want to home in on one, and that would be Intel. Shares surging in the after hours.
Just building the momentum to the upside.
Yeah, 7% to the upside right now in the after hours. Little bit at the beginning, trepidation, I think, from shareholders, but I don't know, it could have to do also with some corrected numbers that were coming back and forth over the terminal for the results, the most recent results. As you mentioned, shares, up 90% going into the print this year?
Well, yeah, we know there was the U.S. taking that position in Intel specifically, an equity position, and it is now the third largest investor in Intel. So that certainly has given it a jolt, if you will, this year. But again, I think what's interesting is the company's CFO speaking in an interview. You can check out our Ian King's right through on this, but Intel saying the third quarter was stronger than it thought across the board. Server demand was a surprise positive. It feels like there's a lot of things that feel like the changes, the moves by Lip-Bu Tan, the CEO, maybe some of it's starting to pay off.
Well, I wanted to see what Jay Goldberg has to say about all this. He's semiconductors and electronics senior analyst at Seaport Research Partners. He joins us from San Francisco. Jay, good to have you. You cover a lot of these companies, including Intel. You've got a neutral rating on Intel. Just give us your first reaction to this report that shows an encouraging forecast after a rebound in the PC chip market.
Yeah, I think it's an encouraging step forward for the company. They've been through some rough times, and I think the driver of this quarter's results are their new products coming on stream using their 18A, their new manufacturing process. As well as some help from TSMC. So a bunch of new products starting to ramp into production and volume. I think that's helping a lot. And I'm most encouraged by sort of the gross margin outlook for next quarter. I haven't run through all my numbers, but it looks like it's much better than expected, which is important not just for the financial weight of that, but also it's a good indicator into how their manufacturing process is tracking.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead.
I don't want to get you in trouble with compliance, but are you going to change your outlook, your rating on the stock?
So I just upgraded it about a month ago from sell to neutral. And my concern here is more that big picture question you all were talking about earlier. As much as this quarter is good progress and we're seeing sort of tactically they're moving in the right direction, the looming question over the company is what are they going to do with the fabs? Last quarter, CEO Lip-Bu Tan said if they don't get a customer for Intel Foundry, an external customer for Foundry, they're going to stop doing advanced manufacturing. And I think that's one of these tough analyst calls because in the near term, if they stop doing that, it removes a lot of expense, numbers go way up, stock goes up. It's a near-term easy thing to do, but long-term it's probably really bad for the company. And it's just hard to square that sort of long-term forecast, multi-year forecast. So I'm still on the fence.
Hey, one thing I want to just point out, Jay, is that it looks like they're talking about seeing a fourth quarter adjusted gross margin of 36.5%. Third quarter adjusted gross margin was 40% against an estimate of 36.1%. Is that the number you were looking for?
Yeah, but there's a lot of adjustments in there, so I haven't worked through them all, to be honest.
Okay. Hey, listen. This is a company that's been around for a long time. You know, you're entrenched in how you were, what you were, different executives coming in to try and right the ship. You know, it's a big ship to turn while also facing lots of growing competition. Do you feel like it is in the right direction?
I think it's too soon to tell. Okay. I really hope it's in the moving in the right direction, but it's too soon to tell. Like, what are they going to do with those fabs, right? And I've been saying for years that Intel's biggest challenge is not external competitors or customers. It's their biggest challenge is internal and fixing their culture. So on that mark, I think this is a step forward. Lip-Bu has he has a plan and he's chipping away at this sort of internal problem. But they really have to readjust their worldview internally and understand that they're not the dominant player that they were for 20 years. They're the upstart now, and they got to act like it.
Jay, we spent a good portion of our program earlier talking about economic statecraft and the new role the U.S. government is taking in companies, the reporting around potentially investing in some of these quantum companies. We, of course, have the Intel, the U.S. government being among the biggest shareholders in Intel. U.S. Steel, the golden share there, the critical minerals and mining companies that have taken investment or had interest expressed in them. From an Intel perspective, How does the U.S. government investment change Intel?
I think it is going to encourage other U.S. chip companies to consider working with Intel Foundry, right? Because NVIDIA's already invested in it. SoftBank's invested in Intel. Now do we see Apple or Amazon or Google or one of these other potential Intel customers sign up to work with Intel Foundry, take that risk? But because it could be seen as patriotic.
That's okay. I'm glad you said that. Do they do it because it's the right thing for their business, because it's the best option for a foundry? Or is it because it shows the Trump administration that they're supporting a business that the administration has invested in?
So I think it can be both, right? My view is that these companies need to work with Intel. They need to see Intel Foundry succeed. Because if they abandon Intel Foundry today and Intel abandons it, entirely, what happens in 5 years when they're, TSMC has an effective monopoly today.
Right.
In 5 years, they'll have a true, actual monopoly. And that's going to be really challenging for all these companies. And so it's hard in, the way that companies work. They're thinking on 90-day cycles. Somebody needs to be thinking of sort of the 5-10-year time horizon. And maybe the government is the sort of the forcing function that gets us there.
You know who thinks in more than 5 or 10-year cycles? A little country named China. They're pretty good about those long-term plannings. Just having some fun with you, Jay. Well, having said that, though, on the other hand, are there companies who are saying, I don't want to get involved with anybody who's involved in the government? Because just like the way the U.S. government for a long time has been, or, U.S. investors have been critical of, sovereign-held entities, in other countries. So is there some, justification in that as well? Or should we just assume that Intel now has a massive, backup called the U.S. government?
So I think everybody's a little bit uncomfortable with the U.S. government taking stakes in companies. Everyone I know on Wall Street, everyone I know in the Valley, just a little bit uncomfortable about it, sort of ideologically. It's not something we're used to. It's clear that, the U.S. is moving towards some kind of national industrial policy. This is one way to achieve that. I'm not sure taking a stake in it is quite the right way to do it, but there are merits for being a little bit more somewhere in between the government controlling everything and the government doing nothing. Maybe there's a happy medium we can find. Hey,
30 seconds on the call, or you're sitting down with Intel execs. What do you want to ask them? Just quickly.
What are you doing with Foundry?
Okay, that was quick. Right. So appreciate it. Jay Goldberg, thanks. Have a good evening. Senior Analyst, Semiconductors and Electronics at Seaport Research Partners.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily Podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.